This next interview was the understudy to Maria in the Ivo Van Hove West Side Story. The last time I saw her was in Songs for a New World at Paper Mill Playhouse. Now she has a new album coming out and she's in a new play. We're talking Mia Pinero. Mia, so what are you doing right this second?
I am currently in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, doing Yoga Play, which is an absolutely phenomenal play. If you ever get the chance to see it, Deepika Guha is the writer, and I'm here for another 2 weeks, it's a short run. We just opened. I had said it's a little warmer down here, so it's kind of nice to escape the New York winter. And it's wonderful to do a comedy right now, to do a play and to hear people laugh. It's been a huge treat.
And you have a new album coming out.
Yes, I do. In 2 weeks, it's pretty surreal. I started the process January of 2021, so it's been a labor of love and something really near and dear to my heart. So the fact that it'll be in people's pockets is pretty overwhelming and exciting. And I had an absolute dream of a collaborator, Alex Thompson, that I worked on the album with. And we made it over Zoom in the middle of a pandemic winter. And it's just, yeah, it's a wild thing that it's going to be available on all streaming services March 15th. So
Are you planning a concert to celebrate this album?
yes. At first, I thought, maybe I'll just play it at, I don't know, a bar or something, and we can listen to it over a speaker system. And luckily, my fiance really encouraged me. He said, no, this album is really special. You should do it in concert. And the way it's structured, it definitely lends itself to a concert setting. And I had always wanted to have a solo show of 54 Below. So this is both my album debut and my solo 54 Below debut, which is really exciting. And it's an album celebration in concert. So I'll be singing the album through and giving some context to the songs and some little behind the scenes of creating it. And I'm so honored and excited to be able to share that with a live audience, which is another amazing thing because during the pandemic, who knew when theaters were going to open up? Who knew when live spaces were going to be open again? So I feel really fortunate.
When is the concert at
It
Five
is
Nights
March
54 Below?
15th. So it is March 15th at 9:30. So it is the day of the release. So it'll come out in the morning and then in the evening I'll be singing it live.
Now, how many of these songs did you write?
So they're all covers. They're all cover songs, but they've been reimagined. So they're stripped down versions. I have anything from Childish Gambino to Stephen Sondheim, John Mayer, Lerner and Lowe. So it's a little bit of a mixtape and just songs that have really impacted me over the years. And they all just came together as this narrative piece. And Alex Thompson was brave enough and gracious enough to say yes to this project. And these are all lyric driven story songs, and they're so beautifully written. And Alex did such a fantastic job of really arranging them so they feel like one cohesive project, because again, we're taking from a couple different styles, but it's very it's stripped down, just piano, just my vocal, to really focus on the story and the lyric.
I have to tell you, I listened to these and I heard them in a totally different way. So that's amazing. I
Oh,
mean, they're
thank
really
you.
wonderfully done.
Thank
Um,
you.
who inspires you musically?
Oh gosh. Ella Fitzgerald was the first person who popped into my head. Audra McDonald, um, Julie Andrews growing up. A lot of those classic voices. Um, Childish Gambino's album "Awake My Love" was, I thought, such a brilliant album, and "Stand Tall," the first track of my album, is from his work, and it's again completely
That's why
reimagined.
I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, so it's very different. I do recommend to go listen to the original. It's this funk, fantastic song, and we've made it into this kind of epic emotional ballad. Um, but yes, I could name so many, but the definitely, and Barbara Streisand, of course. I mean, there's so many, but definitely those women for sure.
They say that eyes are the windows to the soul, but I think that songs are. What
Mm.
song or cycle of songs describes who Mia is?
Ooh, that's that's a tough one because I think it's really dependent upon what we're exploring. I'd like to say that the songs selected in growing up are very they definitely describe a piece of me and a piece of my soul and experience that I've had over the last definitely the last year. And you know, since the pandemic, the shutdown happened, and I had a lot of time to reflect, and being back in my hometown and driving the streets that I would drive to go to school, and being on the property that I grew up at. And I think it's really powerful because music, all of these songs were written by people that were who had a completely different life experience just by the nature that we're different humans. But I connected with them so deeply, and I have a whole list of songs that if they really strike me, I'll make sure to write them down just so I don't forget what you know what that feeling was and what that story was and how I connected to it. So all of these songs were on that list. I mean, Children Will Listen is a song that's really hit home, and it had to be on the album. All I've ever known, that's also on the album. When I didn't even get to see Hades Town until recently, which I just bawled my eyes out the whole show. It's so poetic and stunning. And when I just heard that song, when I listened to the soundtrack, I was like, wow, I just related to it in such a powerful way. And I'm sure a lot of people do. A lot of these songs, um, I think resonate because they're about romance, they're about mothers, fathers. We all have some connection to a parental figure or some sort of romantic figure. So to answer your question, it's a challenge to pick. It's a challenge to pick one. I really do gravitate to Sondheim. Who doesn't? I mean, I just think that his work really touches on humanity and the complexity of it. And I love Rodgers and Hart. Rodgers and Hart makes a feature on this album, and again, lyrically, I think they have such beautifully simple but true and honest storytelling. So I could go on and on. There are many.
What roles would you like to take on that you haven't had a chance to take on?
Ooh. Um, well, this was whenever I would answer this, it was always Eliza Doolittle, and I was luckily able to play Eliza. Love to play her again, but I would love to be Amalia and She Loves Me, Glinda and Wicked, Clara in The Light in the Piazza, um, Juliet and Romeo and Juliet. I would love to tackle the source material of West Side Story because I got to do West Side Story a couple times in my career. Yeah, to name a few, Aldonza. There definitely a lot of these, you know, a lot of those scores are just incredible. Or anything Sondheim, like Joanna, Dot, anything Baker's Wife and Into the Woods. Giving you quite the lists here.
No, it's an interesting list because in what you're saying, they're all classical. Like I'm not hearing any of the new composers, the new productions. And it's nice to hear actually because people are forgetting that those old productions are how this was built.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to hear you say this.
I definitely I really do feel like, I mean, I grew up watching a lot of these classic musicals, and I think that it's a real privilege to be able to reimagine some of these shows. And when I got to do West Side Story, My Fair Lady, I got to do Oklahoma. I never imagined I would be a Laurie, and I had a blast doing it. And I was always drawn to the classic scores, I think. Um, But also, don't get me wrong, Eliza and Hamilton, Lin-Manuel, please call me. I would love to do that as well. He's such a brilliant artist as well. But yeah, I think I trained classically. That's how I started. That I mean, the first show that made me like, oh, I want to do this was Phantom of the Opera and listening to Christine's voice. And I would mimic her sound and record myself at home and play it back. This was before I started voice lessons. And I would listen to Sarah Brightman and again Julie Andrews, Audra McDonald, Kelly O'Hara, Laura Benanti, like all of these classic voices. And that's really what I set out to do. And then, of course, in college, I'm introduced to the more contemporary world. And since I got to do Songs for New World, which was an incredible experience because I was always terrified of those songs. I was always
Really?
like, oh, I don't know if I can sing those. And it was such an amazing experience to have the opportunity to explore that style. And Jason Robert Brown came to the production, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a surreal experience. But
But you
I
also
think,
got to work with his wife, Georgia Stitt, who's
yes, oh
a
my gosh,
major composer in her own right.
yes, and she's brilliant. And I got to actually sing one of her songs at a little concert, and just she's a wonderful artist and a wonderful human. She really encouraged me to be in my power, and it was such a treat to be able to work with her and just to be in the same room and be within the artistry with these. And Carolee Carmello was in that production. I mean, it was really it was quite an experience, and I'd always wanted to work at Paper Mill Playhouse. But just how it was interesting that I think I told myself when I was younger, oh, you can't, that's not what you do. And then later on you start really working other muscles and you find that, hey, actually people do want you to do this material, and you can, and you should. Um, but yeah, it's funny because the way I started out and what I was initially attracted to, probably because that's what my grandmother played for us. We watched The Sound of Music and Hello Dolly. Like she just had these old, VHS tapes, and that's what I grew up hearing and falling in love with.
Is there anything else coming up for you that our audiences should know about?
Well, I always love this question and hate this question because it's part of the life of an artist that, things can happen at the drop of a hat, and then sometimes you're like, oh, catering if they'll have me. um, so right now I'm luckily doing yoga play, and then I will be going back to New York and having my debut concert, and then it's kind of a question mark. It's auditioning, it's the survival side hustle, and it's figuring out what the next step is. So for now, just you can keep posted on, I have a website, miapinero.com, or social media. I'm Mia Pinero pretty much everywhere, whether it's Instagram or Twitter, and I keep those updated on what I'm doing. But yeah, very much in the actor reality of who knows what's going to happen next.
You also mentioned you have a fiance. When's the wedding?
I do. Yes, that's another thing that, just so we got engaged in May, which, and also a little side note, I feel it's so special to me that this album was recorded the year that we got engaged. So there are three songs in this album that are romantic and of course about him. And before he proposed, he had All I've Ever Known, the version that I sing, playing in his head the whole day before he proposed. And he
Aw.
said, I knew what you already felt. Obviously, we've been together for many years, but it was sweet to just know down the line when I listened to those songs that was the year that we got engaged. And we're figuring it out, the date. We're trying to see, things have been really up and down. We've been navigating this new normal, and the industry is getting back up on its feet, and we're kind of navigating what we want to do. And so again, it's a to be announced of the date, but we're enjoying a long engagement and just excited for what's to come because, again, when this album was made, and even now we're still navigating our current situation with COVID. thank goodness it's getting better. But yeah, so it's been taking it day by day, really.
Well, I know your mom is busy planning it already. 'Cause she's a good friend of my friend Maria's.
Oh, yes, my mom is definitely she's very excited. So we're, sending dress ideas back and forth and catering ideas. So we're in the process. You need to solidify it more, but we're not in a rush, which is nice.
Tell that to your mom.
No. I know. Oh my gosh.
I love your mom's name, by the way. Her mom's name is Basha.
Yes, yes,
I love your mom's name.
she is honestly more of a movie star than I'll ever be. She walks into a room and she just has this presence that is unbelievable. And this album also is very special because when the pandemic happened and I was in rehearsals for West Side Story, I went back to Wisconsin, to my hometown, and I got to live with my mom for the first time for that length of time since I was 9. So we got this reconnection period that was really powerful that makes its way into the album. Um, I do a version of I've grown accustomed to her face, and it's about her. And
Oh,
it was true to be on the treadmill of New York City and getting my career moving, and then to have this time with her and to really get used to the day to day with her and waking up in the morning and making coffee together. And it was, I mean, as challenging as the pandemic was for all of us, I think that was a really major highlight.
well, we are looking for I can't speak anymore now. We are looking forward to your concert on March 15th, 9:30, Feinstein's 50 Foot Below. Mia, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.